The $3,200 A7R Mark III is Sony's answer to the Canon 5D Mark IV and Nikon D850. 42 megapixels, 10 frames per second, which can be silent, an electronic viewfinder, and powerful autofocus that can track eyes. Maybe it's time to sell your Canon and Nikon gear?
Some other features that really improve the usability that I'm interested in. The touchscreen, I'm a big fan of the Tilties touchscreen. There's a joystick so I can change my focusing point easily. And here's something that I've always really wanted and I couldn't quite explain. These buttons feel so much better. They're a little bit stiffer, so they're more responsive. It's like driving a car. I like a stiff, sporty ride because I like to feel the road. It's the same thing with this camera. These buttons are responsive. I know when I'm pressing one. There's 2 SD cards. That's great. You don't have to worry about one failing if you have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. What's worse than when you're trying to get the best picture? For me, it's a bird diving into the water and there's an error. No more. 2 cards. You're surely going to get your shots. One card slot is UHS-1, the other is UHS-2, so one's slower than the other one. If you write to both cards at the same time, it might slow it down a bit.
Focusing speed and accuracy are greatly improved over the A7R Mark II, putting the A7R Mark III on par with the Nikon D850, Canon 5D Mark IV, and even the Sony A9.
I have eye detection autofocus on. And when it can't detect the eye anymore, it goes to face detection, but it's really good at tracking. You can see as soon as the eye comes back in, it locks right on. It's good for a situation like this because often I'm trying to fiddle with the thumbstick or change my focusing point. Yeah, it's working really well. This would be great for a portrait shoot.
Pixel shift, it moves the sensor by 1 pixel. So normally you have the bare filter, the red, green, blue array. For every pixel in the 42 megapixels, it's going to capture red, green, and blue information. So basically eliminates noise. If you're shooting at ISO 100, it's like shooting at ISO 25, and it just creates a sharper, cleaner image. I love it in Pentax, I love it in Olympus, I'm excited to have it here. Of course, you still have to always use a tripod, and I think the biggest problem is it's not supported by my Lightroom or Capture One, so you always have to run it through this proprietary Sony software. They have a new menu system on this camera, but I cannot remember which page of the menu all these features are in, so I end up going through like every page every time. I don't know, I'm a back button focus guy, and for some reason it turns off back button focus when you go into pixel shift mode, so that every time you push the shutter, it will autofocus. It's just kind of screwing me up. Chelsea just said there was dust on the sensor, and I said, we don't have like a pen or anything, so she tried blowing on it and ended up spitting on the sensor, so now we have spit and dust on the sensor. Based on my experience with other cameras, pixel shift does not work at all with any sort of movement, which means like no landscapes, because you don't think a landscape is moving until you try to use a pixel shift picture, and then you realize every leaf moved a little and the water moved a little, and then the picture ends up just totally garbage. But you can always blend in a single frame to kind of manually fix those problems if you don't mind putting the extra work in.
The small battery was the single biggest problem with the A7R Mark II, and Sony fixed that completely. The battery is more than twice the size and seems to last forever. If you do run low, you can charge it via USB, something Canon and Nikon can't do. The 10 frames per second really is amazing, but storing that many 42 megapixel images still fills the buffer quickly. And though you can now open the menus while it's writing to the card, you still can't record video or use many of the commands. It's still frustrating. How about the dynamic range? It has plenty to recover usable pictures even when you completely blow the exposure. Photons of Photos actually measured it and says it hasn't improved over the A7R Mark II, and we believe them. Testing raw files processed in Lightroom against our D850, I didn't see a noticeable difference in noise at ISO 3200 and 12800. The D850 was about the same as the A7R Mark II, so it seems like there's not a big improvement in image quality. So, image quality alone isn't enough to decide between the two cameras. The D850 feels better in our hands, and it has a vastly wider lens selection. Because Tamron and Sigma make high-quality lenses at lower prices, a complete D850 kit can be much less expensive too. But the A7R Mark III is more camera for your money. An electronic viewfinder, eye detection autofocus, vastly better video focusing, silent shooting, and a higher frame rate. So should you upgrade from your A7R Mark II? If you're the type who only cares about image quality and DxOMark scores, no, just keep your A7R Mark II. But if you've ever missed a shot because the A7R Mark II couldn't focus, or you couldn't select a focusing point fast enough, or it ran out of batteries, the A7R Mark III is a worthwhile upgrade.
Ready to go inside? Hey, how you doing, Chris?
So are you ordering an A7R Mark III? Let us know in the comments. We are, so it's going to be getting a long-term test with lots of business and travel. Subscribe to see a detailed, long-term, and real-world review from us. Any follow-up questions, ask a comment down below. Thanks.
Another feature that I just found out they put on here, a rating button. You have to go into the menus to assign it, but it's there, and I love it. I'm liking this camera a lot.
Whoa, you and a Sony, huh?
Yeah, I think this might be the one that wins me over. Why does it smell like horse manure? There's literally a horse right in there. Do you see it? That's not right. There's also a guy there. It could be him. I don't want to discriminate.